We are here in Yemen, specifically at the location in Sana'a, which was bombed by the United States late last night. We're all living very close by, and this attack by the United States, it killed 5 people, 14 individuals were injured. This is a civilian zone. There were civilians walking around who were killed. Why the hell are our taxpayer dollars being used to kill civilians halfway across the world? For what, for Israel? I don't understand. The United States was founded on a revolutionary tradition. They called the founders of our country war criminals, the same exact term that is used to label the civilians here.
Well, looks like the political internet has officially crashed headfirst into the Twilight Zone again, so let's slow this madness down and break it apart for anyone who still believes reality matters. Yes, Twitter detectives have now crowned me, a guy who's nationalist, populist left, populist right, isolationist, libertarian-ish, constitutionalist, Christian, and unapologetically erased realist, as some kind of radical centrist because I dared to suggest Jackson Hinkle should squash his increasingly ridiculous beef with Nick Fuentes. Congratulations, you cracked the code, geniuses. Radical centrism, it is. Maybe I'll get invited to the next third way centrist breakfast, enjoying overpriced avocado toast with Bill Kristol and other establishment elites who love pretending to be politically neutral while cheerleading for endless wars. Can't wait. All right, here's what's actually going on for anyone completely lost, which, given the current clown world state of online political drama, I can't really blame you. Nick Fuentes, the best political streamer in the game who's been relentlessly banned from every mainstream platform for daring to speak basic truths, recently tweeted a sarcastic joke calling on President Trump to launch airstrikes against Jackson Hinkle. Now, in case sarcasm is too complex for the room, Fuentes was clearly mocking Hinkle's increasingly cartoonish obsession with cheering on people like Hamas as freedom fighters. This isn't surprising considering Hinkle recently traveled to Yemen and openly aligned himself with these Islamic groups as bad as Israel, corporate Dems, and Republicans by nearly every political standard. Because yes, Jackson Hinkle, the creator of that bizarre yet brilliant ideological Frankenstein called MAGA communism, has lately gone so pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Palestinian, pro-Houthi that he's officially running out of wall space to hang foreign flags. Seriously, his streams are starting to look like the United Nations of Sand People I don't care about as an American. Remember, Hinkle and Fuentes weren't always fighting like divorced housewives in a Walmart parking lot. There was a brief window of time around late 2022 into 2023 when these two young populists actually got along pretty well. They bonded over anti-establishment positions, their shared anti-globalist worldview, strong support for Vladimir Putin's geopolitical moves, and even agreed about faith and tradition. Hinkle once praised Fuentes after having dinner with him in Los Angeles, calling Nick a nice kid, agreeing they were aligned in faith, and even saying, "Get ready for this irony overload. There should be more Donald Trumps in the world. For communists, that's our goal." But this alliance was doomed from the start. Ideologically, these two were always headed for disaster. Fuentes is a Catholic nationalist. He literally said, the movement must be Catholic, must be Christian, there can be no other way, and even, controversially, humorously, suggested that Catholics and Marxists might briefly unite to oppose liberal globalists. In other words, Fuentes saw common enemies clearly. Jackson Hinkle, meanwhile, embraced a weird left-right fusion that briefly, when it was only about criticizing warmongers and global elites. But the second serious political questions arose, like how to handle the Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023. Everything blew up spectacularly. Hinkle went full cheerleader mode for Hamas, openly calling them freedom fighters and refusing to condemn their most brutal tactics. Fuentes, despite his legendary and justified anti-Zionism, refused to go down that road. He called out Hinkle's stance as self-sabotaging, openly praising Hamas terrorists does nothing but help the Zionist media's framing of anti-Israel sentiment. Fuentes sarcastically reminded Hinkle, "Did you forget you're pretending to be Christian today?" implying that cheering suicide bombings might contradict basic Christian morality. Imagine being so far left on Israel that even Nick Fuentes tells you to cool it down. That's the twilight zone we're living in now, folks. Then came the Oliver Anthony debacle. Remember Rich Men North of Richmond? That viral working class anthem everyone loved for about 5 minutes? Yeah, turns out Fuentes and Iggy Ignoramus were dead right about it being astroturfed populist bait. Initially, I, like Hinkle, bought the hype, but once Fuentes exposed the reality of how manufactured Anthony's image and message were, I immediately flipped. Fuentes nailed it. Hinkle stubbornly stuck to class politics, unable to accept uncomfortable truths. Fuentes pointed out about race realism and deeper cultural rot. Nick rightly mocked that mentality, labeling it weak, naive, and ultimately playing into globalist hands. Fuentes was proven right again. So fast forward to now. Fuentes tweets a sarcastic jab about Hinkle's Hamas cheerleading, and suddenly we have Hinkle supporters out here labeling Fuentes, Nick Fuentes, as a pro-Israel streamer. Do these people realize how absurd they sound? Fuentes is literally America's most outspoken critic of Zionist political influence. Calling him pro-Israel would be like calling AOC a constitutional originalist. Just transparently hilarious. Yet Hinkle and his crowd are doubling down on it anyway. That's why I stepped into this clown show and told Hinkle straight up, "I hate this beef. I like both of you guys, but honestly, Jackson Hinkle, this one's on you. Why not squash this? There's no logical reason for this beef. Hinkle gains nothing from continuing this pointless feud. He's alienating potential allies and losing credibility by the second." But of course, Twitter geniuses took that as evidence that I'm some kind of milquetoast, Tim Pool radical centrist, because in the year 2025, anyone who urges basic tactical unity against the real enemy, globalist elites systematically dismantling our freedoms and sovereignty, must obviously be a latte-sipping, third-way neoliberal. Got it. Look, I still support Hinkle personally, and I sincerely hope he stays safe because he's fighting establishment propaganda on many fronts. But politically speaking, he's lost his compass. He's obsessed with becoming the voice for literally every foreign nationalist group abroad at the expense of a coherent American nationalist message. Fuentes isn't the enemy. He's exactly the opposite. A voice that's consistently right, even if politically incorrect. Nick Fuentes doesn't fear being canceled, and he isn't wrong about race realism, cultural rot, Oliver Anthony, or why openly supporting Hamas terrorism is strategically idiotic. Bottom line, this entire feud, friendly fire. Totally unnecessary drama, distracting everyone from the real threat. Jews, Israel, Zionists, centralized power, globalist elites, and the wholesale destruction of American freedoms. Why can't Hinkle supporters see this? Why can't Hinkle himself see this? Maybe they're too busy putting up Hamas flags next to their North Korean posters to notice. Leave a comment below if you think maybe, just maybe, populist leaders should stop behaving like soap opera divas and start uniting against the actual enemies destroying our nation. Or maybe I'm just being a radical centrist again. At this rate, I'll probably get invited to Andrew Yang's next Forward Party meetup, where Liz Cheney lectures us about how drone striking civilians is actually patriotic, as long as both parties agree on it. I'll bring the mimosas.